we'll get started. But yeah, just wanted to thank everyone who is joining us live tonight, as well as anyone who's watching this possibly on recording. Tonight we have obviously our names, these fancy little cards up here. Myself, I'm Zach Johnson, auctioneer, realtor, and real estate broker with the Swicegood Group. I'm joined by our president and CEO, Kyle Swicegood, and his amazing wife and the glue that holds this firm together, Elizabeth Swicegood, both who are auctioneers and real estate brokers themselves, and really, like I said, what makes this company go around. Before I turn it over to them, I just wanted to open this webinar with just a little bit about what we believe as a firm. You know, I believe that when you do business with people that believe the same thing as you, it just makes things click. You know, so I tell people all the time, we have 3 real strong beliefs at our firm. You know, number one, we believe the selling process should be simple. We believe that sellers deserve absolute certainty when it comes to selling their most valuable assets. And last but not least, we believe that 9 times out of 10, the auction process helps sellers sell for the highest price in the shortest amount of time. Now, our firm is both a traditional real estate firm as well as a auction firm. And on the auction side, I'll actually let Elizabeth get into, you know, what we do and how we do it. But we sell real estate traditionally and using the auction method. And each of those methods has its own pros and cons. So we just want to go over those today, kind of compare the similarities and the differences from the perspective of both of these people that have done it for many, many years. And hopefully you all can get something out of that. So with that being said, one housekeeping thing, if you have any questions, there's a chat button down below. It looks like a, well, it says chat, pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to type them in the chat. I'm going to periodically be looking at that throughout the event. We'll do our best to get those answered. Also at the end, I'll be putting our contact information down. So don't feel like you have to zoom in and, you know, what's that phone number up there? We'll put it all in the chat and get that to you before we leave tonight. So with that, you know, we had a few questions come up on our last webinar. And Elizabeth, could you kind of go into some of those questions and just tell folks a little bit about the Swicegood Group and who we are and what we do?
Sure. Thanks, Zach. I'm Elizabeth Swicegood. I got my real estate and broker license and became a realtor in 1999. And I became an auctioneer. I guess it's been 6 years ago now. So I have both of those licenses in North Carolina and full-time real estate sales since 1999. So many people ask us, you know, what are the types of properties that you sell generally using the auction method? Well, we sell all forms of real estate, improved and unimproved. So residential, commercial, raw land tracts. And we have been able over the years to avail ourselves of the highest levels of continuing education and professional designations, which specialize in each of those asset classes. So in addition to the typical brokerage, North Carolina licensing law requirements, we have gone above and beyond that to get professional designations, such as accredited land, residential specialist, graduate realtor institute, certified auctioneer institute, just to name a few. So when you're talking with the Swicegood Group, then you can be assured that you're talking to someone who has extra education and has tried to become the most knowledgeable possible in their specific area of expertise. What areas do we serve? We serve North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. We have licenses in those particular states, and we have connections with a very large nationwide referral network in which we can connect you to a professional in other states as well. So as many times people say, well, if I'm going to sell my real estate asset using the auction method of marketing versus the conventional method of marketing, Do I have to sell it regardless of what the price ends up being at the end of the auction? And of course not. No, that is not something that you have to do. You can elect to sell your property absolute, which means you would be selling it to the highest bidder, regardless of the final price. Or you can choose to reserve a price that you're willing to accept. And if the bid meets or exceeds that number, you're authorizing the auctioneer and broker to mark that property sold. So you do have lots of options. Another option is selling subject to seller confirmation. And what that means is there's not a set, hard, fast reserve, but you're going to take the highest bid at the end of the auction and determine whether you would proceed and accept that bid or possibly counter that bid or reject that bid. So those are the options that our sellers may avail themselves of if they're choosing an auction method of marketing.
Awesome.
Zach, why don't you share with us a little bit about the marketing side of the auction process?
Yeah, absolutely, Kyle. And this is a great way to dive into the similarities that the auction method and the traditional real estate method. Marketing, that's one we get all the time. So in the traditional real estate world, when all these realtors out here, the traditional, the realtor you think of when they market the property, obviously everyone knows about the signs on the property. They know about the MLS, the multiple listing service. Those are really the two main ways that real estate brokers attempt to sell real estate. They throw it, they cast that wide net with the MLS, and they expect other brokers that participate in the MLS that are members to try to sell that property for them. So it's similar in the marketing of an auction. We do the same thing. However, we go above and beyond with the marketing to create more of an event type atmosphere. Kyle, I believe, I forget who it was years ago in a education class that they likened an auction to a birthday party. If you don't send out invitations, nobody's going to come. And we take that to heart. In our auctions, we try to create an event, an excitement around the asset, whether it be personal property or real estate. And that's really the difference. But again, we'll get to differences later. We're talking about similarities here. One of the other similarities is disclosures. People say, in an auction, it's as is, where is. What's the seller trying to hide? Well, believe it or not, in the auction world, we still have to abide. We're still real estate brokers. We're still realtors, members of the National Association of Realtors. Therefore, on the MLS, we have to post disclosures about the property. Now, a disclosure is simply just a form, and there's multiple disclosures that sellers have to fill out to just give the public, any indication of issues. If the roof's getting ready to cave in, we can't just ignore it just because it's an auction. We still have to disclose that, and so from that aspect, buyers. Some buyers are turned off by auctions, but we explain to them that, listen, the auction is just a way to arrive at a purchase price. The system, the selling system itself is much the same. The auction's just a way to arrive at that price. So disclosures are another thing, whether it be the residential property disclosure, the mineral oil and gas disclosure, lead-based paint disclosure, that they all apply to both traditional sales and the auction sales. So again, just because it's sold as is does not mean buyers are turned off, because they think they're buying a nightmare. We still have to disclose material facts to the buyers. Another similarity is showings. No one's going to buy. Well, I take that back. I've seen it before, but people don't like to buy properties, especially real estate, without getting a chance to take a look, walk through it, to inspect it. Our real estate auctions are a lot like a traditional sale in the sense that we encourage showings. We have open houses, what we call them public preview days. We also allow other brokers to show the property. So we rely on, again, more brokers that are helping us, the better. And we encourage them to show the property, whether it be on the open house date where they accompany their client, or whether they schedule a private showing where they walk through with their client. Again, as a seller, we will never allow random people, unaccompanied in your home. They'll always be either with a staff member of ours or with a licensed broker. We have to do that. The Real Estate Commission, National Association of Realtors, that's their best practices. So, Kyle, I talked a little bit about the co-broke. How does the co-broke help the seller by allowing other brokers to participate? Explain that to folks.
It reminds me of the conversation we had this morning. If you'll remember that, about 10 o'clock, Zach. The old country adage of pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered is a concept that we really take to heart, because we're not trying to hog the fee. We want to empower the brokerage community. I mean, there's 4 or 5 of us in our company, but there's thousands in the MLS. We happen to be members of New York State MLS, Charlotte MLS, and Winston-Salem MLS. And if any one of those brokers will go on our website to frequently ask questions and fill out a broker participation form, we will pay them for bringing their client to the table. Now, we make it very easy on brokers. We handle it contract to closing. All they have to do is fill out the broker participation form, and we have the contract filled out, because the only thing that we lack is a purchase price, and we have that handled the night the sale is over. So as Zach said, we do encourage visitation at our open house, both for brokers as well as bidders. How do we get people there? Well, obviously we use the MLS tools to invite the brokerage community, but we hire an outside marketing firm to make our event famous. We try to get 50 to 75,000 views on a particular sale. If we don't have that many, we're probably not hitting the mark to achieve the market price that we're trying to achieve. We do not hesitate to allow anybody to do inspections. We encourage them to do the inspections before they place a bid, as that bid is a commitment. The closing process is very similar to a conventional closing process. Once it's under contract, we have a non-refundable deposit that goes to our closing attorney. The closing attorney handles it all the way to the time of recordation. 99.9% of our sales are subject only to a clear deed, whether it be a general warranty deed, special warranty deed, or otherwise. But Zach, there are some differences. So why don't you share with us kind of the differences in the conventional process versus the auction process?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyle, just to touch on what you said with inspections, one of the differences in the traditional sale, the inspections take place after the contract is signed, in that due diligence period before closing. We encourage inspections, but buyers need to perform those inspections prior to bidding. Is one of the little differences, but those similarities that we discussed, there's more. We can't hit them all, but we just tried to hit the high spots. The difference is this is the one that gets people all the time and gets sellers excited. In the auction world, there is no commission due to our firm from the seller. In the traditional world, there's a commission fee that comes off the top, essentially from the seller to the listing firm, and then they share that with the any co-broking agent. One of the great things about the auction method is the seller, whatever that high bid is on the day of the auction, they keep 100% of that high bid in our auctions. That's the way our firm is set up. Some other firms may be different, but how we collect our fee is what's referred to as a buyer's premium. And in a buyer's premium, essentially it's a buyer paid fee. It's common in the auction world. If you go to a personal property auction and you buy a Sawzall for $100 and there's a 10% buyer's premium, when you check out, swipe your card, it's $110. And that's how the auction firm makes their money, pays for the marketing, pays for the online platform, especially our firm. But that's a big selling point with sellers, is they understand that traditional mindset. And that's why a lot of folks go the for sale by owner route, or whatever route they may be trying to go to try to save money. Well, there's no better way to save money than a 0% commission. So another difference is timeline. Even in today's market, where contracts or properties are going under contract quick, that everyone knows that on the outside looking in. But what they don't understand is from time of marketing to closing still remains a fairly significant time, because there's still inspections that come, there's still appraisals, there's hoops to jump through, contingencies, which is a word we don't like, the C word, contingencies, timeline. In our auctions, typically we have a 30-day real estate auction bidding period. So from the time we go live with the sale to the time the auction closes is 30 days. What we found is any more than 30 days, we fail to create a sense of urgency with bidders, and any less than 30 days, and we really don't give our marketing time to do its job and to reach the market effectively. Then from the end of the auction, we require our buyers to close in 30 days. So you're looking as a seller in the auction method from start to finish, from signing the contract to a paycheck, of approximately 60 days. Now there's times when we may say 45-day window to close, which would stretch that out a little bit further for the seller. But again, that's property specific, and we talk with the seller about that in the beginning. One of the things, and I may be jumping ahead, I'm not, it's one of my next things here, is the seller sets the terms. I just told you the seller can control the closing timeline. In the traditional real estate world, the seller is really in the back seat and someone else is driving the car. The buyers, they give their offer, and many of them have different contingencies with their offers. Some of them have high due diligence fees. Some have a quick timeline to close versus a long timeline to close. It's all over the place. In the auction method, the seller gets to set every term and conditions of the entire auction, obviously with our help, and it puts them back in the driver's seat. The only thing that the seller can't control, the only thing that they allow the buyer to control, is that purchase price. So buyers see that that's a fair trade. They have to play by the rules. Everyone has the same rules. And in this market with, I'm not going to say unfair practices, but in the traditional real estate world, there's a lot that goes on behind closed doors, and buyers are left out in the cold a lot, and it can be frustrating as an agent that has represented buyers recently. Sometimes it gets frustrating because you're doing everything you can to help your client, and sometimes it's just out of your control. In the auction method, everyone knows what cards are on the table. If you want the property, you know exactly what it's going to take, because the only thing you have to negotiate is price, and the seller sets everything else. Liz, I mentioned contingencies just a second ago, that word we don't like in the auction world, at least. Can you go into that a little bit and explain a couple of the different ways that the auction method, again, is different than the traditional method?
Sure. So there is one C word that we love in the auction industry, and that is contract. Because in North Carolina specifically, there are two offer to purchase and contract forms, and one is a conventional and one is an auction. And they could not be more polar opposite. One contract is a buyer form designed to basically protect and represent the buyer. And the contract for the auction form is basically a seller form designed to protect the seller. And the way that we know that is because of the contingencies that are built into each one. So in the auction sales contract form, there's only one contingency, and that is for clear title. If the seller cannot provide clear title, the buyer is entitled to a refund of their deposit. Otherwise, their deposit is a credit towards the purchase price only at closing. Now, with the conventional sales contract, there are all kinds of contingencies built into it to protect the buyer. And you can tell that by the number of pages. That contract is quite lengthy. I think it's up to 14 now. They change it periodically, and the auction contract 6, maybe 7. So you can tell that one is very streamlined and one is very basic and one is very complicated. So we do like one aspect of the C word, and that is the contract. So we are traditionally, as auctioneers and brokers, sellers' representatives. We're not dual agents. We're not trying to look after the buyer and the seller and play somewhere in the middle. We identify our allegiance and our fiduciary to the seller at the beginning of the process, and that remains to be our focus all the way through settlement. And that's a big difference in the conventional world as well. I did conventional real estate probably the better part of 16, 17 years full-time before I incorporated the majority of my sales and transactions using the auction method. So I'm very familiar with both forms and both contracts and the way that real estate is conducted on both angles. And I will tell you that the auction method, in my opinion, is far superior. As Zach pointed out, everyone's on the same playing field. What happens today in this fast-paced, crazy real estate market, there are auctions going on every day, and they're happening on the desk of a conventional broker who's not licensed as an auctioneer and who's not trained as an auctioneer. And they're sifting through a mountain of offers trying to come up with what's best for their seller, or perhaps somewhere in the middle if they're a dual agent. And that is a difficult process. So as a buyer, I wouldn't want to be involved in that. As a seller, I would be frightened. As an agent, I'd be traumatized. So, and that's kind of the way it has been over the past number of years. With the auction method, it's all out there on the computer. There's no secrets. You can see what the terms are. You can see what the bid is at any time, whether you're registered or not. It's transparent, completely transparent. What's happening on a broker's desk in a conventional transaction is a mystery. So it's just a great process. Enjoy representing our sellers greatly. And we love to get the high testimonials, and we love to hear their comments following the sale about how easy the process was. The seller does not have to worry about repairs or renegotiating a contract price to make the buyer happy and to keep the buyer in contract, because with an auction form, the buyer's in contract. And the seller doesn't have to jump through hurdles to make the buyer happy and to keep them in contract. What happens many times in the conventional world is the buyer will get under contract, and then they will try to renegotiate a price based on an inspection report or whatever it may be. And if the seller does not meet their demands, then they simply exercise their right to cancel. And then the seller, is left with a property that either A, they're going to have to repair or make material fact disclosures, because all of that has now been revealed. So it leaves the seller in a bad place. So most sellers feel the pressure and they just cave in. With the auction method, they don't have to do that, not at all. So we encourage the bidders to make their inspections and bid accordingly. So it's just a great process. It's a fun process. It's really exciting the way that auctions are conducted online. People wait usually till the last minute, and it just gets really exciting. And our software is designed to convert to a live real-time bidding process towards the end, so it can be quite exciting. And as the bid goes up, the seller's net goes up as well. And Zach did point out that when the seller looks at that high bid, which is their net number, that is what they can expect to receive, save and accept the typical seller closing costs, which every seller, regardless of the method of marketing that they choose, will be paying, such as deed stamps, deed preparation, and prorated property taxes, or HOAs.
And I'm going to jump in for just a second, Zach, and kind of drift off of the range as far as our notes are concerned. The question that most people want to know is, does it work? I mean, do you guys, I get this question asked all the time, are you guys selling a lot of property? And I can tell you without a doubt, as the broker in charge, just in the last 30 days, I can put a pin in Rowan County. I can put a pin in Wilkes County. I can put a pin, multiple pins in Forsyth County. I can put a pin in Davie County. And that's just in the last 30 days. The system works.
Don't forget
Zach,
Jefferson. Don't forget Jefferson.
Yeah, that's right. Zach, let's talk about the advantages.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyle, to play off what you said there in the last 30 days, I don't want to boast about our company, but we were just looking at some of the numbers, and in the past 2+ years, just a little bit over 2.5 years, we've utilized this auction method successfully and sold over $20 million worth of real estate and personal property. So the system works. All people have to do is go on the website and look at the sold tab. You could scroll for 30 pages of assets that we've helped help sellers sell. And really what it comes down to is, if we can do for a potential seller what we've done for all these other folks, what would stop them from moving forward with us today? So I'm really excited about what the future holds for us. We're looking at 24 minutes here. Yeah, let's go with a couple key closing points here, and we'll get everyone on their way. One of the things I wrote down here is auctions. They're not for every property. Some work better, some don't with conventional. But really, when you look at what we've used as a firm to sell using the auction method, I have here truly unique properties. I can think of an entire Civil War battlefield, Kyle, that you sold in Virginia. I can think of unique properties that maybe they're owned by a celebrity. We've had a few Lake Norman assets in that area that, again, because of who owned them, made them valuable. One of the other things are properties that are hard to value. If you go on our website right now, we are auctioning off an entire mountain in Ashe County off of Water Tank Road. It's on the website currently as we speak, literally a view that you can never imagine. Pictures don't do it justice. Videos don't do it justice. How do you put a price tag on that view? You can't. If we were to list that conventionally, where do you set the bar? I don't want to set a ceiling on my client's earning potential. I would feel horrible if in the back of my mind I found out we listed it for $500,000 and someone would have paid $1 million. So again, properties that are hard to value. Also difficult properties. The traditional mindset of a lot of sellers is auctions are only for distressed properties or properties that there's something wrong with them. Well, that is a great way to utilize the auction process, but absolutely, I tell people all the time, some of the most valuable assets in the world are sold at auction, whether it be a Kentucky Derby winning horse or Michael Jordan's championship basketball shoes. The auction method is used to get the most amount of money for a particular asset. But yes, Liz, those are some of the advantages. What are some other advantages that we had talked about the other day of the auction process, especially in the current climate that we're in?
I think I'm glad that you addressed the idea that's kind of a misconception, especially in North Carolina, that somehow auction properties are foreclosures or distressed assets in some way, or the seller's upside down or something. That could not be farther from the truth. And, like I said, maybe in years past, 10 years ago, the auction method was selective in terms of which assets you would want to go that route. But in today's real estate market, it doesn't matter. Every asset, any asset will perform very well and to the seller's advantage using the auction method because of inventory. Inventory is extremely low. And like I said, conventional brokers are basically having auctions on their desk. So why not do a real auction? So I guess, thank you to everyone actually for coming and taking some time to listen to us. Who do you know that might need an auction? Who do you know that might need some information? We're here. If you have any questions, we're happy to talk about it because it's something that we enjoy. It's something that we love to do. And when you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life. So just give us a call. Let us know how we can help you and show you the best way to proceed with your property, whatever it is, if it's a personal asset or a real asset.
Elizabeth, one of the things I'm kind of disappointed in all three of us is we haven't given the web address, I don't think, of the most important site to us, and that's ready-to-buy ready2bid.com. That's where we conduct our e-commerce business. That's ready2bid.com. You can also get there by typing the swicegoodgroup.com. It all goes to a landing page. But if you know of anybody that wants a consultation and wants to understand a little deeper about how this process would be beneficial to them, we encourage you to call one of the three of us, and one, two, or three of us can show up and give you all of the information that it would be pertinent to your potential transaction event. Zach?
Yeah, thanks for everyone. I didn't notice any questions in the chat. I'm over here looking. I did post, number one, there's a webinar form on our website. I posted a link to that. Really all that is a way to give some feedback to us on how we did, how useful this information was, any comments you might have or questions. If you didn't want to ask them in chat, those forms will all be emailed directly to me. I'll respond to you, do anything I can to help. Also, our contact information, so you don't have to write down the little verbiage that's on there. It's all in the chat. Feel free. And I did see something come in from Angie. I'm going to check that.
Angie's asking, how does financing work? Can a buyer have a conventional loan? I'm so glad that you asked that question. Elizabeth, why don't you answer that question?
Sure. Yes, in short, the auction contract is just like the conventional contract in that it allows ample time for someone to secure financing. I would encourage you, however, to have the credit aspect of your qualification fully completed before you bid. There is no contingency built into the auction contract if something fails on your financing. So you want to make sure you're solid, and then all you have to do is get the property through the goalposts. So, but there is enough time, 30 to 45 days are built into the contract, and that's about what it takes, whether it's conventional or auction, to get a property financed today.
The majority, I would say the majority of our residential real estate auctions end up going the financing route. We occasionally, last week, we had a really good sale that wound up being a cash transaction, but the majority of people do use financing. And I want to compound on what Elizabeth said. Go to the auction, make sure you've already spoken to the lender and are confident in your pre-qualifications.
Yeah, Kyle, Jeff asked a question. What happens if the auction price falls below what the seller wanted at the end of the auction? And that's an awesome question. You know, from time to time, we don't meet the expectations of the seller. And by using a non-absolute auction, whether it be reserve or subject to seller confirmation, contractually, the seller is not obligated to sell. They have the right to choose. What we find is 9 times out of 10, a seller, when presented with the remember, at this point, we're 30 days away from closing as soon as they sign that contract. A lot of times sellers come to a realization that, hey, we show them our Google Analytics. We don't have the time for Kyle to pull those up right now, but we can show them the amount of bidders we had, the amount of impressions we made, both in our social media advertising as well as our Google ads. And if we can prove that the market showed up, and the market tells us, you know, people say all the time, what's true or fair market value? Well, an auction is a great way to show market value. As long as we did our job, the market will show up and will tell you what they're willing to pay. But to answer your question, Jeff, they can either flat out reject it, and then we're back to square one, but that doesn't really help anyone. A lot of times we can maybe find some middle ground, some common ground by talking to that high bidder, talking with the seller, and coming up with an agreement between the both of them. You know, maybe it's a give and take, and we meet in the middle. And that way everyone's a winner. Because at the end of the day, the buyer's shown that they want to buy, and obviously the seller wants to sell, or else we wouldn't be going through this process in the first place. But what I can confidently say, Kyle, I know, and Liz, you may have the numbers. Our success rate, mid 90%, on dropping that hammer. The system works. It really does. And do either of you have anything you want to expound on that comment?
Yeah, the one thing I will say is the auction, there's another thing that the auction is. It's an appraisal. As you said, if we've done our job marketing and the market shows up, the market is speaking. In my opinion, that's much better than any third-party disinterested appraiser who is going out to evaluate a property based on comps. And I'm always able to judge based on how many registrations we have and how many views we've had on, I mean, we take serious Google Analytics. We typically have, again, 40 to 65,000 people that look at each auction. When that happens, that is a temperature of the marketplace. They're either interested or they're not. And of those 40 to $60,000, we have 12, 15, 20 registered bidders. And if 10 or 20 registered bidders are competing against each other on your property, that's smart.
I think you meant to say 45 to 60,000 impressions on the website, not dollars.
Did I say dollars?
It's fine, Kyle.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking like a real estate broker, right? What other questions? What other questions do we have?
Yeah, in